Hello, it's Tim here from My Life Tonic, and welcome to another Lunch and Learn session where, for Mental Health Awareness Week, we are focusing on the theme of community. So, in today's session, talking about community, but importantly, community within the workplace. So, how that we can establish what can be described as a caring culture at work. That will help, firstly, underpin employees, colleagues, potentially friends as well, mental health, understand what the repercussions will be for the workplace and for the individual. Also going to start to signpost why a workplace and why encouraging a positive work culture matters. How do we create a caring culture? What are the potential signs of a disconnect within the workplace? Is the sense of community potentially being lost? How can it be improved? So what can we do to create that caring culture? I think one of the main points that I really want to emphasize is that it's all of our responsibility, particularly in the workplace, to create a caring culture, a culture that people feel included and welcome in. And then to summarize, just to really give a few action points that people can just be mindful of, be aware of, how we can create a more caring culture within the workplace. And they are just purely suggestions and starters. Some may resonate with you, others may not, and that's completely understandable and realistic. So why creating a positive culture in the workplace matters? Well, I think this one slide says it all. We spend a third of our lives at work. So maintaining a positive mental health within the workplace, within the people that you are working in and around, will have a significant impact on both the way we feel and our own mental health, but also the output and the productivity that we have whilst we are in the workplace. After all, if we're spending so much time in the workplace, surely it will be positive for us to be in a good mental health and good state of mind, so that we ultimately, as individuals, are bringing the best to the workplace, but then also, secondly, and maybe rather cynically, that we are giving our best to the employer that we work with. So ultimately, there are two benefits here. And this is why organizations can spend a lot of time and effort into well-being and wellness programs. One, it improves, maintains a positive mental health within the organization. And also, it can help improve the productivity within the organization and enhance various metrics that people may be judged in, whether it be productivity, whether it be reducement of recruitment costs, reduced absenteeism, reduced presenteeism. Now, this is just the first of multiple stats that I'll be sharing today. And that's really to underline why it is so important for us to really consider the initiatives that we can do to support people's mental health and the repercussions that it has. And it's really not something that we can take lightly. I'll take you through some of the stats now. So ultimately, if we spend a third of our time in the workplace, I think it's pretty obvious, quite important, that an individual feels that they belong. Now, it may be a sense of community that we are spending time in because we have a job, we need to earn money. But by creating a sense of community, because we spend so much time there, is, I think, pretty important. So if we then start looking at some of the stats, and I did warn you that there are going to be a number of stats in this session, 875,000 UK workers took time off because of work-related stress. And really, what does that mean in sort of real terms? Well, actually, that equates to 17.1 million lost working days in the year 2022 to 23. That's a lot of time where people are not present, not doing their jobs, which has the repercussions in terms of putting increased pressure on other work colleagues. It could mean that certain roles, certain jobs cannot be completed on time. So Rather than just looking at the 17.1 million days lost, there are also knock-on effects, knock-on costs to other colleagues within the organization and costs to business. Mental health was the largest cause of people taking time off at work through to illness. 54% of people that took time off work was due to mental health challenges related to mental health issues. 51% of all of the long-term sick people in the UK cited depression, anxiety, or stress as being a reason. So not only we're talking about 17.1 million work days lost, but we're also talking about a significant cause of people being off sick within the workplace. And again, just touching upon the impact of the long-term sick, we have the costs to have a temporary replacement. We have the increased stress of those that are still within the workplace to cover the work that needs to be done. So there are multiple knock-on effects that people and the organization will experience. 61% of people stated that mental health was a reason for them to want to leave their job. The annual cost of illness within the workplace, mental health illnesses through the workplace, is £51 billion per year. Now, that's a large sum in itself. But then if you look that £24 billion worth of those costs were attributed to presenteeism. Now, presenteeism, if it's a concept you might not be 100% familiar with, is that people are feeling disengaged within the workplace. They are at work, but not really working to their full capacity. So by creating that sense of community, by getting people engaged, can also have the impact, the positive impact of supporting the business. And I know I've gone on a few times about the negative impact that colleagues being away from their desk, from their roles in the office can have, not only from a financial perspective, but by because of their colleagues. There's also the impact of morale that can be affected when it's quite clear that people are either present but not working, or have an increased level of absenteeism. So building up the story here in terms of what are the costs are to the business and why creating that culture is certainly not time wasted or costs wasted. One of the more recent stats is that 79% of people surveyed in the UK 2022 to 23 felt that they were close to reaching burnout. So is that accumulation of covering other people's work? Is it expectations too high? Is it that there's a sense of disconnection? There isn't that same shared value, same sense of purpose that people have when they're in the workplace. And if indeed they're feeling disengaged, that they are then equating that to, and that is driving them to that sense of burnout. Previously, I've mentioned with regards to mental health is some of the differences between younger and older general populations. We've talked previously about 18 to 24-year-olds feeling the most lonely with section within society. That can also be seen a trend within the workplace that between the 18 and 24-year-olds within the workplace, they're likely to have or have had 1 in 3 will have had time off through to illness. Now, in contrast to the over 50 sections, 1 in 10 are likely to have taken time off for illness, mental health. So starting to see trends here that if we don't arrest or we can't engage with all sections of society, but in this case also the younger population, that actually we may be creating more of an issue down the track for the workforce, for our society as a whole. And really, this is where the sense of community really becomes important, sense of identity, sense of shared values. So almost having created a potentially rather negative picture of where we are, looking at what is a caring culture. And I've really alluded to this in some of my other time presentations, lunch and learns, in terms of caring culture is something that ultimately translates to creating a sense of community, a shared values, so that we are psychologically feeling safe within the workplace. We are listened to, we are respected, our ideas are at least accepted as part of the ongoing conversation. And I know I used an analogy before with regards to feeling like a small piece in a jigsaw, in terms of our shape, our size, our color, the vibrancy fit. We feel safe to be who we are within that workplace. And that gives us a greater sense of connection. And within that sense of connection, we then start to instill a greater sense of resilience, resilience to overcome any challenges that may come into our work environment. Having that shared connection with colleagues will help us try and work through those challenges, whilst also sharing some of the potentially emotional frustrations or burdens that we have. So we want to maintain that identity so that as a collective group of people in a workplace, that we feel compelled to sometimes go the extra mile to achieve things over and above our existing remit, particularly when challenges arise. We want to be able to support each other, not only just on an informal nature within an organization, team members within a certain location or structure or team, but also to facilitate that support as an organization. So you will see a number of organizations have various initiatives, well-being programs, wellness programs, weekly or regular yoga classes, access to platforms that can provide tips and advice on how people can manage stress, how they can feel more grounded, also how they can maybe gain perspective if stress, anxiety is becoming an increasingly part of their life. Everyday kindness sounds a really easy or simple thing to do. And in a way, it's almost a shame that we're having to talk about having to be kind. In my mind, this should be part of our own personal DNA, whether we're at work or at home or within our community. And for me, that kindness really falls down to acknowledging people's success, supporting people when they need it, thanking people when they have gone over and above the extra mile, through to also accepting and celebrating any wins that an organization, a team may have. And by creating that supportive environment and acknowledging each other's successes, then we can start to create that sense of community within the workplace. And it really will make a difference. So, unfortunately, we've given the stats in terms of the scale of potential challenges that's created by illness and absentee, presenteeism within the workplace. We've alluded to what will contribute to helping create a caring culture, a community at the place of work. So, what are the signs of disconnect that we may have that perhaps we also need to be aware of? Similar to being aware of what are the signs that someone may be struggling with their mental health, there are certain indicators that within a place of work that there could be a disconnect within the workplace, within the team. Another stat, and apologies for this. Only 9% of people feel engaged within their workplace in a survey in 2023. Now, what are the repercussions of that? If you're feeling disengaged, your levels of detail, your levels of attention, your commitment to working that extra little bit hard to get deadlines completed on time or work completed on time will be reduced. A collective belonging is also therefore reduced. You're not feeling part of that working community with a shared purpose and a shared goal. People in themselves, when they are feeling disengaged, generally do the bare minimum. And I'm sure either you or you have seen in the workplace, when someone is engaged, it's generally quite easy to see. And actually, again, going back to the absenteeism and the presenteeism challenges that can arise, it's not great for the individual, it's not great for their output, and it's also not great for the organization and that team. When there are these performance issues, 1 in 4 people that are under performance reviews in the workplace state or cite that mental health is an issue that can be affecting their work and their output. So there is just one more stat that can help prove the importance of keeping people engaged, people wanting to support the business and to work together. That would probably be it. I talked briefly about absenteeism and presenteeism. 17.1 million days are lost when people are either absent or present but not working. And the actual financial cost of that is £24 billion each year. Even making a small headway into that and within the national stats and the figures, that would make a difference. But if we look then down into the potential costs within our organization, nibbling away at that sense of disillusionment, disengagement will have an impact on the business. I talked previously about some of the signs that someone may be struggling with their mental health. And I think it's also good to use that as a bit of a recap here. So we then have the reduced productivity, the routines start to slip, whether it's punctuality, hitting deadlines. It can also be their emotional reactions to situations at work. It could be maybe slightly more irritable, snapping. It could be overly emotional in contrast to someone's activities in the past. It may also be that someone starts to take greater risks at work. There's that sense of disengagement, lack of care. They might be taking those risks because ultimately they're not too worried about the consequences. Now, there is a fine line with that, obviously, within caring, supporting work environments. I've been in organizations where they actively say, fail fast. And that's a great example of a trusting, safe environment to work in that being encouraged to try new things, try to make a difference, look and analyze the results, the impact of whatever that activity it's been. Put your hands up if it's not worked, learn from that, don't do it again, and then try something else. So in terms of individual behaviors, we need in the work environment to encourage that. Habits. An individual's personal habits can also start to change, whether it's that self-care, whether it's their dress, whether it's their posture, their eating habits, their exercise habits. I outlined in a previous Lunch and Learn that they may be within your community signs that someone is struggling with their mental health. It's exactly the same within the workplace. And although maybe slightly differently because it's a place of work rather than a community that you have chosen necessarily to join in your spare time. So that was really potentially the negative side, the signs of when people are disconnected. The good news is that we can create a caring culture, that we can maintain a positive mental health by keeping people engaged, by creating that sense of community, showing that we care within the environment, within the teams that we work in. And one of the ways feels and seems really simple is to genuinely check in with people. And that's not a formal check-in, sitting down and having a one-to-one. It can just be a eye contact, a hello, a good morning at the point of arrival when we get to work. And it could be a goodbye or just having a general chat with people appropriately within the workplace. So obviously we are here to work, but also having that personal connection with teams within our organization can certainly help. Acknowledging individuals, whether it is birthdays, whether it's anniversaries within the workplace, can all start to create and establish that caring culture. Creating social slots so that within the working environment, the people can get together, communicate outside of the sort of general work chat is also important. One of the countries and the cultures that do this particularly well is Sweden. They have the regular occasion of fika, when the exercise is ultimately about sitting down, having teas, coffees, and then cakes, whether it's bought in or sold, or bought in or homemade. The important thing is that people are getting together. It's a break from the work environment. It gives people the opportunity to converse on a non-work related, sort of safe environment. Now, it might not be right for all work environments, but actually creating that time when people can get away, talk to each other, get to know each other a little bit more, does then foster that sense of community. I talked about acknowledging people's successes more through their anniversaries and time celebration spent at work. But let's also make sure that we celebrate even the smallest of wins within a team and an organization. Generating that feel-good factor within your team, within an organization, can again bring a greater sense of purpose and make people feel acknowledged and recognized. Lastly, when creating a caring culture, a sense of community, make sure that as and when or if we ask for feedback from colleagues and from team members, that we listen and action, and then maybe apply some of those suggestions that may have been given. And that can be from any member within the organization, no matter their location, their seniority, their age. People need to feel listened to, but also in an active, positive way. Now, that's not to say that every idea is going to be great. It obviously won't be. However, by opening the floor for feedback, opening the floor for questions, do make sure that on occasion the right ones are actioned and acknowledged as a result of that feedback being given. Excuse me whilst the plane flies over. For me, ultimately, when it comes to culture within an organization, the key element here is that everyone is responsible. And I alluded to the fact that an idea, a good idea, a suggestion can come from anyone within the organization, from the welcoming people to the building as and when they join. To create that sense of community is really important. How we treat each other as team members, as organizations, will also help to instill the values within that organization. And everyone, again, whichever level we are, age or seniority, length of service, everyone can be a role model to support each other. And there's an expression here when we talk about culture and how that really can be fostered in a positive way to create that sense of community, that creating that sense of community can help maintain each other's positive mental health, is that culture grows or breaks in the gaps. So wellness and wellbeing programs are fantastic in supporting each other, but actually it's what we do on our day-to-day basis as the norm rather than the exception that becomes really important. So I said that we'd have 10 actions to consider. Actions that we can include in our daily routine that can support the creation of that genuine sense of community. We can start meetings with check-ins. We can acknowledge people's efforts. And I appreciate this is a little bit of a recap. We can offer help without being asked. Make time for informal conversations. Respect boundaries and breaks. So, for example, in those speakers, don't start talking about work. Celebrate personal milestones. Be mindful of the tone of messages that we say or send. Welcome new team members to the organization and listen without fixing and encourage self-care time. Try to help reduce those levels of burnout so that when someone does come to work, they are ready and wanting to be productive and deliver in whatever organization, whatever role that they are doing. Just as a final wrap up, My Life Tonic, we offer year-round support for organizations and individuals. Community is one element that is so important in terms of maintaining our own mental health. I say that it's one element out of the 5 pillars of well-being. The other pillars being physically active, being present and mindful, continuing to learn, whether it's a new skill or a hobby or an activity. Learning can help reset the neural pathways. And then lastly, giving. Giving has a benefit for both the giver and the receiver, and it's not a surprise why some organizations allocate and dedicate time for their employees to spend some time volunteering. Creating habits so that any changes people want to make is a good framework for people to start using. So Atomic Habits, it talks about identifying who it is you want to be as an individual, understanding the trigger that causes a certain action. And if we want to change that action, either minimize or reduce the accessibility of that trigger. And once we have started making those changes, think of a reward, but just be careful of the reward that you choose. If, for example, someone is trying to get fit and the reward for doing 6 days of exercise is to go and have a really unhealthy meal, perhaps that reward isn't in alignment with the objective of getting fitter. So within My Life Tonic, we have frameworks. We've talked about the 5 pillars. We've talked about atomic habits, but we also offer a range of life tonics. These are small things that you can introduce into your daily routine that can help make you feel more productive, more stable, more resilient, and potentially maintain a more positive mental health. If you have any questions with any of today's information, or indeed how My Life Tonic can support you as an individual or your organization, please do get in touch. We'd love to hear from you, and thank you so much for joining. Thanks, Harry. Thank you for joining.